So just the interview, if I could put it that way, interviews between Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May being interviewed by Jeremy Paxman. Jeremy Paxman's a well-known newsman here in the UK and occasional TV presenter. He's about 70 now, originally from Leeds, and he's one of the best-known TV presenters, newsmen around. I don't want to talk so much about the interviews because, frankly, they were difficult to hear. And that's actually what I want to talk about. I really think it's time for Jeremy Paxman to go. This was an event organised by Channel 4, which he's associated with, presumably from London. And basically, it was an interview whereby he, as a journalist, is supposed to ask these two leaders questions. In 10 days, either one of them will be the Prime Minister. Theresa May remains ahead in the opinion polls, but the gap has narrowed. This is the thing that irritates me, and I'm not alone. I know a lot of people get frustrated by this. Jeremy Paxman is of the school of journalism that basically is confrontational, gotcha style arrogance. I don't like it at all. So basically, every single question he would not let Jeremy Corbyn answer without interrupting him. Literally every question. So it became very difficult to actually listen to what Jeremy Corbyn was saying. The issue for me is not necessarily the questions themselves. It's the fact that Paxman clearly feels it is his job to badger and interrupt and be as aggressive as possible. He done it to a lesser extent with the Prime Minister, but a little bit with her as well. Frankly, this style of journalism, I don't think the wider British public want it. Most of the comments I see referring to Paxman's approach are negative. And the thing is, someone of his status in the news world is such that I think it is actually difficult for Channel 4 to kick him out. He sort of sees himself as the king of Channel 4, so I think it's his ego that is driving it. He done this in the last general election with Ed Miliband. Miliband held his own. I think tonight Jeremy Corbyn held his own. I didn't manage to see it on television. I've watched it on YouTube. But, you know, Corbyn would have went in there knowing full well that Paxman would have been on the attack. I think Corbyn handled himself very well. Theresa May, maybe not so much actually, and Paxman was slightly softer with her, I thought. Although he badgered both of them. So here's the thing: I really think it's important in a democracy that leaders are held to account. And one of these people, as it stands, Theresa May is the incumbent, but in 10 days, one of these people will hold one of the most powerful jobs, not only in this country, but in the world. Forbes regularly ranks British Prime Ministers among the top 15 most powerful people in the world. So it is right that they are asked tough questions, and some of the questions that Paxman were asking I felt were legitimate enough. So it's not the questions I take issue with, it's the way he's constantly interrupting. And I think there's a real arrogance there because networks basically do what they want and they don't really care what the public perception is. I honestly believe that's the case. We've seen this in recent years with pretty much every big network. They clearly are not listening to public feedback, which indicates to me there is an arrogance going on there. But the culture at Channel 4, obviously I'm not internal. I don't know what's going on, you know, in the offices of Channel 4. But I think it's quite plausible that because of Jeremy Paxman's name, you know, he is a dominant force and it would probably be difficult to get rid of him because he's probably the sort of man that wouldn't be easily pushed out. I think he's thoroughly arrogant. I mean, it's a pity because in other areas, Paxman, I've seen some of his documentaries, he's a good presenter. He's clearly clearly a very intelligent man. He's a good presenter. I've seen his series, for example, on Victorian paintings. I enjoyed that. As a news reporter, as a newsman, this style is just wearing thin. The public are getting tired of it. because people want to judge leaders based on what their answers are. And yes, they want, tough questions to be asked, but I think there is a way to do it. And I believe there are journalists out there who get the balance far more, far better. For example, Christiane Amanpour on CNN, she asks tough questions, but she, for the most part, at least allows her guests to answer the questions. Paxman doesn't. He will ask tough questions, then he'll just interrupt and not physically let the person answer. There's a few other people like that. Bill O'Reilly, the disgraced Bill O'Reilly, I might add. I can't help feeling there's a bit of poetic justice in that, because the likes of Bill O'Reilly like to play judge, jury, and executioner and basically God on earth until he himself was exposed. But that's another issue. Um, I honestly think Paxman feels it's his duty to do this, but these people really do think that they have immense power, and I think partly it is because they do have a great deal of power. I would argue to some extent the power that the media has um, goes too far in our current system, because it should not be a case that newsmen and newspaper editors can call the shots on this. I think it is right that politicians can bite back, so to speak. I think Jeremy Corbyn held his own. Most people seem to suggest that he won the debate, even those who don't agree with him. I think he performed very well under the circumstances. I still have big concerns about Jeremy Corbyn, but I think he handled his own. Anyway, it's not just Jeremy Paxman. Faisal Islam done the same thing. On the Sky News event during the Brexit referendum, EU referendum last year, again, David Cameron, Michael Gove representing the two sides, Faisal Islam constantly interrupting every single answer. Why is it news people think that this is what people want? They don't want that. They want politicians and those in power to be asked tough questions. That's fine. But they want to hear the answers. And that's something the likes of Jeremy Paxman and Faisal Islam don't seem to understand. And it seems to be ego-driven. I wonder, is Faisal Islam, in fact, kind of setting himself up to be the next Paxman? He's a good bit younger, and I wonder, is that kind of what he has in mind? But I think this is something that is now wearing thin. I think the public don't like it. A lot of people were saying this event was a mess. I have to say, incidentally, the audience, it was very difficult to gauge whose side they were on, because both leaders got quite a few cheers. Well, not cheers, but applauses. I think probably Corbyn a little bit more. And I think partly that is because he held his own. The same thing happened with Ed Miliband in 2015. Miliband was set up to be a weak leader. Paxman was clearly trying to get under his skin. But I remember that point when he said, I stood up to the leader of the free world and opposed to airstrikes in Syria. Now, that's something I disagree with personally. But the point was Miliband held his own against Paxman's bulldog style. The same thing happened tonight with Corbyn. So I suppose, paradoxically, it could be a good thing for Jeremy Corbyn that Paxman was so rude. But I don't think it's good for democracy, because it doesn't allow the public to really listen to what people are saying. I don't think it's good journalism. I think it's just egotistical journalism. And basically, I think Paxman needs to go. He's had his moments. He's a sound presenter. He's done He's done a lot of work. He's written plenty of books. He's got plenty of accomplishments. I'm not taking that away from him. But that style that he comes out with, people are getting fed up with it. And it isn't just Paxman, it can be seen across the board. But, these news networks, they need to really understand that this just does not resonate well with the public. It looks aggressive, it looks arrogant. Of course, you don't want the other situation where journalists are completely passive and don't ask tough questions and kind of just accept whatever the person says. I wouldn't want that situation either. That would also be bad journalism. But the best journalists, in my opinion, get a good balance. They ask the tough questions, but they allow the person to answer, give them time to answer. Clearly, if someone's, waffling on and giving a very long-winded speech, that's another matter. But this was the case, especially with Jeremy Corbyn. The man couldn't even answer the questions because he was constantly interrupted. He had the patience of a saint. And I think he came across quite well under the circumstances. So let me know your thoughts. I think Paxman's had his day. I think he needs to go, based on what I've seen tonight. And I really hope this style of journalism is discarded because people do not like it. And I don't think it's an asset to democracy.